The party that gets the vote is the party that gets the smoke. Remember that. Now, reparations, and so do their families. Native Americans get reparations. Holocaust survivors get reparations.
Right is right and wrong is wrong. If you're not supposed to be in our country legally, then you got to go. Okay?
We are always overrepresented in the worst statistics. 15-20% of the population and more than 50% of homeless families. This ain't nothing we've done wrong. This is about the wrong that come with policies specifically for Black Americans. That is not a race-based policy. That's lineage-based. And America can definitely do that. We have to stop.
Reparations, and so do their families. Native Americans get reparations. Holocaust survivors get reparations. Japanese Americans got reparations from this here land. So who built this here land? Hello, everyone. Welcome to 50 Shades of Greg with your host, Greg Marcel Dixon. I hope everyone is doing well. If you are in the chat, can you please share this on your social media? And can you please hit the like button? You know, I'm still very much getting used to this podcast thing. I don't even like the word podcast. I don't really understand it. I guess it's like a broadcast that's not done with a televised studio. I don't know, but I'm still getting used to it. So if you're here in the audience watching this, can you please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, let me see, I remember everything, and please share this on your social media pages. I got some of our people who have been giving me some tips, you know, and I'm the type of person, look, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it to the best of my ability. So I'm glad that y'all are here with me this evening. I'm going to get right to the point. And I'm going to preface everything I'm about to say with this. This is not going to be, you know, some back and forth with Dr. Umar Johnson. I don't move like that. I think that's classless. And if any of you follow me on Twitter, y'all know I can sling mud and people sling mud at me and I can clap back with the best of them. Yes, I can. And y'all know I do from time to time. But you don't really ever see me beefing. I don't do beefing. To me, it's a waste of time. And we have too much damn work to do, in my opinion, for us to be quote unquote beefing. This is educational. I want this broadcast to address things that are going to be substantial, that are going to be substantive, that are going to help educate our people. And when I say our people, I'm talking about Freeman FBA of Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves, emancipated people, but also other people in general who might be allies, because there are some out there, or who could potentially become allies to the reparations movement, and just the masses who are just fed up with this political system that has been terroristic is an understatement towards Black Americans. And because they don't do us right, they ain't doing right by no one. So I want to make this educational. Now, y'all know I interviewed Dr. Umar Johnson, was like a week or two ago. And I feel I was very accommodating. I was very deferential. I was too damn accommodating, if you ask me. It was very good. It was nice intellectual discourse. And it didn't talk about reparations as much as I would like, because you'll have to understand this podcast I sometimes do it on my own, like I am tonight. And sometimes I go through a studio from whom I've paid to have a number of shows. And when I do it through them, they help with distributing and advertisement and things like that. That night I interviewed Dr. Umar Johnson. I did it through the studio, and they only give me 50 minutes. So that's partially my fault. I was new. I'm still new to this podcast thing. I thought 50 minutes was a very long time. I thought we were going to be able to really go deep into some of the topics I wanted to discuss. I didn't get to a lot of things that I wanted to discuss with Dr. Umar Johnson, but I made it very clear that it was an interview. It was not a debate. And I, for my part, kept the interviewer energy. You know, letting Dr. Umar Johnson have the last word, and even sometimes letting him overtalk me, which, you know, I did not appreciate, overtalk my co-host. But I always say when a person has to overtalk you, that means they can't out-argue you with facts and data. So I don't really always take me over, when people over-talk me, I don't take it too personally. And I'm not saying it's a dig, that's just generally speaking how it goes. Y'all know I'm doing this whole lawsuit thing right now. And trust me, I am doing pro se, I'm representing myself, but I have spoken with a lot of lawyers. And I always knew, and it's been confirmed, that lawyers, when they can't use facts and the data's not on their side, they use emotion. They use their tone of voice. They use presentation. They use conviction, even when the emotion and the facts and the data is not supporting them. So when people try to overtalk an argument I'm making or respond to a question I'm making by just over talking me and my co-host, that kind of shows that you have nothing to say in response to what I was saying. So I felt the interview went very, very well, but I do want to make it clear that it was an interview, not a debate. Now, Dr. Umar Johnson has since done a video that kind of caught me off guard. He did a video where he pretty much said why Lineage reparations will not work. The reason it's caught me off guard is because during my interview, for those of you who watch, you clearly heard Dr. Umar Johnson said that he did not really care about reparations. You know, it wasn't his thing. He was not concerned about it. For a man who just said he was not concerned about it, he then makes a whole video spreading. I originally referred to it as lies, but I'm going to soften a little and say spreading misinformation. Now, whether he's doing it maliciously, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's speaking out of ignorance. But Dr. Umar Johnson is a very, very brilliant man. Okay, he's brilliant. And he knows that you really don't want to speak on something about which you do not know, especially something as important to Black Americans, Freeman FBA, something that we are centuries old, that we should have gotten a long time ago, and that we have done more progress within these past, I guess, 3 to 4 years than in the past existence of the entire United States of America, and getting or making progress to getting is reparations. So when it comes to this reparations movement, we have to be careful. Those of us with large platforms who say we're for Black people, and when you say Black people, that includes Black Americans, Freeman FBA. If you say you're for us getting justice, having ownership, then speaking against the only way to constitutionally get the reparations movement is a very dangerous thing. So I'm making this video to respond to some of the points that were made. One, in the video Dr. Umar Johnson made, he said that he supports race-based reparations because lineage-based reparations would not work because it would open the door to white Americans. That is absolutely false. First of all, the Supreme Court ruling of just 2 weeks ago, where they pretty much struck down race-based policies, pretty much makes it clear that constitutionally speaking, in the United States of America, you cannot do race-based policies. Yes, it's true. This is a country that did race-based policies for centuries to terrorize Black Americans. That's true. But after the Civil Rights Act and the other and accompanying civil rights legislation of the 1960s, race-based legislation was ruled, as it should have been, unconstitutional and illegal, and it does not stand up to constitutional scrutiny. So you cannot do race-based legislation and policies even if you wanted to. That's number one. Number two, however, when it comes to the history of reparations in the United States of America, it has never been race-based, ever. Look at Native Americans. There are many different Native American tribes. Do you know there is not one Native American reparations package? Native Americans, according to their ethnicity, their lineage, their status, they each have different settlement packages that entitle them to different resources, and sometimes money being one of those resources they get from the government. They don't say, oh, you're Native American, which is technically a racial group, and give them all reparations. No, the Navajo tribe gets this, the Cherokee tribe gets that. The different tribes have different settlement packages they get according to their lineage, their status, okay? The Japanese Americans, which I was 4 years old, when that was signed into law. And then I was 8 years old when they actually started doling out the paychecks. That was not done by race, okay? They didn't say you're Asian, you get a reparations check. Dr. Umar Johnson talked about how these other groups stick together and how black people don't stick together. I can agree that we probably can stick together more. We can do a better job at it. But these other groups aren't sticking together when it comes to them getting things from the government, because when the Japanese Americans got reparations, it didn't go to all Asians, because technically the Japanese designation falls underneath the Asian Pacific Islander racial group. It didn't go to all Asians, okay? It didn't even go to all Japanese. There were some Japanese at the time where the Japanese who were put in internment camps happened, who were living on the East Coast, and they were not thrown in internment camps. Mainly the ones on the West Coast, where the majority of Japanese Americans were living and still live to this day, were put in the internment camp. Only those ones who were put in the internment camps received reparations. And in the case where they were dead, because several of them had died by the 1980s, and then by the 90s when the checks were being distributed, it went to their surviving spouse if they had one, and they did not have a surviving spouse, it went to their direct descendant, which can mean a child, a grandchild, as long as you're a direct descendant. Then you have the Holocaust, okay, which was not necessarily done by America, but could not have happened without the United States of America. And technically, the U.S. did do a form of reparations for Holocaust survivors. You know how I know? Because my great-grandfather was a soldier at the time in World War II, and he's still alive. He's 99 years old. But the data's out there. The first thing the U.S. did after they defeated the Nazi regime is they made the German government give back to any Jewish person, and non-Jews as well, because there were some non-Jews who were impacted by the Holocaust. They made the German regime at that time, the German government, give back to all who were harmed by the Nazi regime back their property. Anything they had lost, they were to restore. America instituted that and oversaw that. That's reparations, or at least a form of it. And then the establishment of the Claims Conference, which has now paid out somewhere like close to $1 trillion in payments, direct cash payments to Holocaust survivors. That doesn't go to all Jewish people. It sure as hell ain't going to those black Jews. It mainly goes, almost completely goes, to the white Jews who were unfortunately put into the concentration camps. And there are other reparation packages that Holocaust survivors are receiving. And in some cases, if they have passed away, it goes to their direct descendants. That's not race-based. It is harm-based. So the thing with reparations is harm-based. And you have to be a member of the group that was harmed. That has to be a part of your lineage. I challenge anyone to show me where America has done reparations based on race. You won't find it. Even when they did reparations for the enslavers, who were all white in D.C., they didn't do it because they were white necessarily. They did it because they were enslavers and they wanted them to emancipate the people, my ancestors, the ancestors of Black Americans, FBA freemen. They wanted them to emancipate them, and they wanted to incentivize them to do it. So they paid them reparations. But even that was not done based on race. There is no history of race-based reparations being done in the United States of America. And there is definitely no history of it being done post-civil rights era of the 1960s. But Dr. Umar Johnson could have simply done a simple Google research and looked at the best example we currently have in our modern era, California. On the day where Justice Clarence Thomas, everybody wants to blame him for a ruling that the 5 other white justices also made, on the day that it was ruled that race-based policies and admission programs to colleges and universities, which has pretty much reaffirmed that race-based legislation is unconstitutional, on the day that was struck down in the Supreme Court in regards to affirmative action, that same day, the California Reparations Task Force released their reparations plan. You know what? That's ironic. Those of you who have been in the reparations movement or have at least been following it, you know that it was a big fight over should reparations be done based on race or it should be done based on lineage. And people like Camilla Moore and others stood their ground and made the argument that it should be based on lineage. Why did they do that? Because on Twitter, because like Dr. Umar wants to accuse people, we hate Black immigrants so much, we want to exclude them. First of all, Black Americans, FBA, freedmen, whatever designation you want to use, because really your name does not matter. I use freedmen because that is actually a government recognized status. That was the protective status. That is the protective status that has gone to any Black person who is a descendant of American slave since the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. It was to protect Black Americans who were formerly enslaved and then subsequently emancipated by the United States of America, even though they really emancipated themselves. It was to protect them from re-enslavement, that status. But slavery went from parent to child. So if the status of a slave went from parent to child, the protective status of freedmen, for which there was an entire government agency, also goes from parent to child. So we are still freedmen. We'll get to that in another video. I'll explore the freedman status more. But whether you want to call yourself ADOS, freedman, foundational Black American, whatever. The thing that's important, however, is that you are a Black person who was a descendant of a person who was enslaved and then emancipated by the United States of America. Okay? But we are delineating. Delineating is not an act of hate. If delineating is an act of hate, then I will show you a place that Dr. Umar Johnson loves and that I love too, believe it or not. I have visited several times and I've enjoyed it and I always had a fascination with it, but I'm not going to worship it. The African continent. On the African continent, you have almost, what's the number now? 2 billion people who delineate. Okay, I've been to 6 African nations. None of them hardly ever call themselves Africans. They refer to themselves by Yoruba, Igbo, Chioni, okay, Lu, Wolof, okay, Akon. They refer to themselves by their tribal distinctions. They're delineating. Do we say that's hateful? It's only hateful if they start discriminating against those who are different from them. That's when it becomes hateful. But delineating in and of itself is not hate. And in the case of us as Black Americans, going back to California, they spoke with constitutional lawyers, several who had made arguments in front of the Supreme Court. Every single last one of them, and one of them being a lawyer who is very renowned, a scholar, a lawyer, professor who's very renowned, he said, if you make it race-based, it will not be constitutionally valid, and it would be struck down. The reason the California Reparations Task Force was able to succeed, and they were able to see it through, and they were able to release their plan, which is now going to the state legislature, and we are going to work to see it through, even though the ultimate goal of reparations is federal. Reparations is a federal responsibility, but we're going to support what our California family is doing. But the reason they were able to get that far is because they made it lineage-based, which made it able to stand on the constitutional grounds. Because why? I'm not a lawyer, but you don't have to be to know that America is a country based on laws. Do they ignore those laws a lot of times? Yes, they do. But America is a country based on laws, based on a constitution. And what's the most important word when you're dealing with law? Precedent. Precedent. The California Reparations Task Force, those like Camilla Moore and others, who stood their ground for lineage-based reparations, they knew that precedent matters. They looked at past reparations that America has done, and they saw that it was all done based on 2 things, harms and the group that was harmed. And you have to be a member of that group. You become a member of that group based on your lineage and by your status. But I can give you an example. You have, and this is in my area, you know, we have North Carolina, I'm here in South Carolina. You have the Glickman versus Pigford lawsuit. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to give you the short end of it. Black farmers, as you know, has suffered decades of government-sanctioned discrimination by the USDA. There's a reason why we as Black Americans, I used to say, have lost 20 million acres of land or more. Now I want to call it what it really is. We have had stolen from us 20 million acres of land or more. The Glickman versus Pigford court case is one of the cases that speaks to this. The United States Department of Agriculture discriminated against Black farmers for centuries. But since they were instituted as a department, they discriminated while at the same time they were giving white farmers and European immigrants grants, all types of machines and loans to pretty much mechanize their farms and pretty much boosting them into the middle class and upper class. While Black farmers who had to fight tooth and nail to get their land, fight off lynch mobs, hope that they don't get their land stolen via eminent domain, via phony tax default sales, who had to fight tooth and nail against being paid far less than what they should get on these damn jobs, never getting reparations, seeing their prosperous towns destroyed. They fought tooth and nail to get the land, to keep the land, only to lose their land because the United States federal government discriminated against them because of their identity. You see? That's a harm. So the Pigford versus Glickman, the Black farmers from North Carolina and South Carolina, and then it started including farmers from the Gulf, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, they sued the United States Department of Agriculture and won. It's the largest lawsuit, I believe, launched against the federal government to have seceded. You know why they won? They didn't say, oh, you owe Black people because you owe us because we Black. They said, you discriminated against us because we were Black. So yes, race does matter, but they don't get the repair based on their race. They had to prove that it wasn't that they don't deserve repair just because of their race, but because they are a member of the group that was harmed. And they were able to show that they were members of the group that was harmed. They're still paying out on that lawsuit today. Some of those farmers have unfortunately passed away, but they're still paying out on that Supreme Court case. The Pigman versus the Glickman versus Pigford Act, mispronouncing it, was successful because those Black farmers, they stuck to the fact that yes, their race is Black and the people who were impacted were Black, but they were also members of the group that were harmed. You have to have those two qualifiers. So reparations does not go to just all Black people. It goes to those who are, yes, Black, but also those who are descendants of the people who were enslaved and then emancipated by the American federal government, because it was that group of Black people in particular, that particular group, who not only never got reparations after slavery ended, who not only were betrayed during the era of Reconstruction, but then went through subsequent extreme horror, genocidal violence from lynch mobs and black codes, which became Jim Crow, which started in South Carolina, of course, from the racial massacres, from the Federal Housing Authority locking them in the projects and housing covenants and putting railroads and highways through their land, through medical experimentation, to debtors' prison, sharecropping, mass incarceration, conscripted labor, okay? Redlining. It goes on and on. You have to prove that you are a member of that group. So like with the Japanese Americans who were interned, yes, you had to be Japanese, but that was not enough. You couldn't get reparations because you was Japanese. You had to prove that you were a member of the group of Japanese who were harmed. The same standard applies with reparations for foundational Black Americans and freemen. Yes, you have to be Black. There is a racial qualifier, but race in and of itself does not qualify you for reparations. It cannot be race-based. You Black, you get a check. No, you have to prove that you are a member of the group that the United States of America, the federal government, has harmed. In order to do that, you have to be of the lineage and status of a person who is a descendant of people who were enslaved and then emancipated by the United States of America. Now, during my interview with Dr. Umar Johnson, he talked about how during the Civil War, there were a lot of Africans. I have found no data to support that, none. But I did find this. And I could have mentioned it then, but like I said, time was running short because I knew it then. So I'm going to share my screen. I did find this, though. I wasn't around during the Civil War, but I have words from someone who was. I have a statement here from someone who was around during the Civil War. And let's read who he says fought and saved the nation. Let's see if he says it was a bunch of Africans and Caribbeans. Let's see. Give me one. Let me see. Let me make sure I find this quote because I don't want to butcher it. I want to read it directly. Let me find this quote. And I know it word for word, but still, I want to make sure that you hear it from this person who said it. It's a direct quote. Okay. Give me a minute, y'all. And I'm not looking at the chat. You know, I'm still trying to get there. You know the quote I'm looking for from Abraham Lincoln. And I can quote it myself. I want to read the direct quote that Abraham Lincoln said after the Union had won the Civil War. And I want to read to whom he gave credit. And remember, Abraham Lincoln, contrary to popular belief, was not necessarily a friend of Black people. He didn't want slavery to spread. That's true. But he was not necessarily, you know, he expressed on several occasions that he did feel the white race was superior to Black people. So, you know, Abraham Lincoln wasn't so necessarily as pro-Black, quote unquote, as he wants to make it seem, as the history wants to make it seem. But I want to read what he said. Let me see if I can find this. And I want to get the language right because I'm finding versions of the quote. I want to get the exact quote because I want the word to be there. What is it? So y'all bear with me, please. I had this saved on my phone in bookmarks, but it didn't transfer over to my Google account on my computer. And by the way, I want to be fair. There were a few, I did research, there were a few people from the Caribbean who fought in the Civil War. I believe the number was it was single digit. It was single digit. But let's see who the majority of the people were. Y'all, I cannot find this quote at all. Let me see if y'all have it here on. Y'all, I cannot find this. Let me see if I can find this quote. Give me 1 second. Where is it? I'm trying to find a quote. I may have to just say it and I'm going to find it. But pretty much Abraham Lincoln said himself, if not for the Black freedmen, the Union would have fallen. He made it very clear. He didn't say if not for Africans. He didn't say if not for Caribbean. He didn't say it wasn't and not for the white soldiers. He said if not for the freedmen. Because the truth of the matter is, if anyone's familiar with the history of the Civil War, the North was actually losing the war. The North was losing the war. And you have some white people out there who want to say, well, those white soldiers fought for you to be free. Well, first of all, no, they did not. But even if they did, if people want to make it an issue of white people fought to free black people, then white people were mainly the ones enslaving black people. If people want to go there, that's always been a BS argument. But another thing is when the Union was losing the war, and then they went to North and said, hey, we need more soldiers because we're losing, white people rioted. They did the draft riots. They almost burnt New York to the ground because they didn't want to fight for the Union. It was the black soldiers, over 200,000 of them, most of them formerly enslaved themselves, who signed up and fought and helped to save America, okay? So the point I'm making is we are not just members of a group that have been harmed, we're also members of a group that is old. Now, I want to talk about this thing about how white people will qualify because some of them have ancestors who were enslaved. First of all, that's a very bad faith argument. You hear that a lot. When I had Dr. Umar Johnson on and he was like, y'all don't go after whites, Hispanics, Asians. And I said, okay, you obviously don't know me. You obviously don't know me. Because I go after those groups if they're anti-black all the time. And those of you who know me know I do. So what I will say to the good doctor is if you don't know something, say, I've never seen you, or I don't know, or ask, do you go after these groups? Don't say what someone does not do when you're wrong. Same thing with this qualify for reparations. It is not just having an ancestor who was enslaved. That is not the only qualifications for reparations. Okay? The truth of the matter is until legislation is actually written, and I'm not talking about that HR 40 mess either. That's a sham. It's a study of reparations. And even then, that study doesn't specify to whom or who should be the recipients of reparations. They don't specify that reparations at a minimum should be cash-based, like every other group has received. They don't specify, or at least originally they did not specify until we tried to fix HR 40, so we realized it's beyond saving, and we decided we're going to do our own thing. But they didn't specify originally how long the study would last. So HR 40 is a sham. But being it as it may, the Democrats have had decades where they could have already passed HR 40, did their little study, and passed our reparations. So HR 40 does not count. So until there's actual legislation in Congress, the qualifier that most of us use, and I would encourage Dr. Umar Johnson to read the works of Dr. Sandy Darity and his wife, Mrs. Kirsten Mullen, because that's usually the standard a lot of people use, where they say that you have to be identifying consecutively as black for at least 12 years or more, and you have to have an ancestor who was enslaved and emancipated by the United States of America. In my plan, I say you have to be identifying as black for your entire life, okay? Because I never took a break from being black. I never had no interest in taking a break from being black. If you could take a break from being black for a year, keep that energy, okay? So I say you have to be identifying as black for your entire your life. You have to be an American, and you have to be a descendant of a person who was enslaved and emancipated by the American government. And there are always going to be scams. I mean, look at the Dodge rolls. Look at what the Dodge rolls. And you got all these $5 Native Americans running around. That's why, as with California, as what my plan calls for as well, whether I implement my plan, I don't know. But hopefully someone will take it and run with it, make it better. There has to be an agency who are staffed by people of the lineage, people who have a history of doing work for reparations for the people of their lineage. You have to have an agency that is staffed that's going to vet all claims. You're always going to have scammers, no matter what. You're always going to have people who are going to try to grift on something to which they're not qualified. So, of course, you're going to have a random white person or a person of another race come along and say, well, I've been identifying as black all my life, and I'm a descendant of a person who was emancipated by the United States of America. You know, you're going to probably have that. But the truth of the matter is, if a person, let's say Rachel Dolezal, for example, let's say a person been identifying as black all their life, which in her case, she was not. If you look at their parents, and both their parents say white, and all their grandparents say white, but let's just start at the parents. Okay, you got two white parents, and you came out black? I don't think so. So you have to have an agency that's going to vet those claims. But the qualifier is you have to be a black American. You have to have an ancestor who was enslaved and emancipated by the United States of America. So having an enslaved ancestor in and of itself is not enough. It's not enough at all. Now let's talk about race-based reparations. From whom will we get this race-based reparations? Has anyone ever asked that? And I don't want to take shots at Pan-Africans because many people have a Pan-African mindset who support lineage-based reparations. So I'm not going to paint all Pan-Africans with a broad brush. Even on my interview, Dr. Umar Johnson said there's disagreement among people who have a Pan-African mindset. Technically, you can say I have a Pan-African mindset. Yeah, I want black people who have been wrong throughout the world to get what they're owed. You know what else I want them to do? Stay in their countries and fight for what they're owed. And I support them and they support me. And if they come to another country, like we have black immigrants here in America, you support the black people there in their fight to get specifically what they're owed. And supporting them, not simply saying, yeah, I support it. They'll support them is getting off their tail and working as hard for the people who made it possible. In the case of America, black Americans, the people who made it possible for you to come to this country, you get off their tail, you work as hard for them to get what they're owed as they worked as hard for you to be able to get there and to enjoy the rights that you're enjoying. Because when you stepped off a plane, you came to a country where the government is anti-black, but they're not necessarily doing full-blown racial massacres anymore. They're not doing sharecropping anymore. You came to America when it had, to some extent, subdued its anti-blackness. You came after black Americans, like my great-grandfather who is still alive, my great-grand-aunts who are still alive. And if you go back just 2 decades, my great-great-grandparents were still alive. At least 2 of them were. You came to America after they did all the fighting. So you could get off the plane and breathe in the fresh air and talk about what we should and should not do. You came in after everything was laid out for you. We are being born the same way there are white people. And this is according to data. The same way there are at least 100 million white people who are still benefiting from the Homestead Act of 1862. That's just one act. The government has done many things to help white Americans, European immigrants. The GI Bill, Social Security Act, Labor Union Act. But let's focus on the Homestead Act of 1862 that gave 300 million acres to white Americans and European immigrants who weren't even Americans, who had not built this nation like black Americans. Freeman Foundation Black Americans had, who had not built the infrastructure of this country, who had not introduced industries. There are whole industries that exist in America because of black Americans, okay? I'm not agriculture, railroad, Wall Street, healthcare, like a lot of different examples. I go on about how America is America only because of black Americans. So when I get told that I'm African in America, hell no, I'm not. I am a black American. I am a black American, okay? But my point is that if you have white Americans who are still benefiting from policies the government did to help them, but they went out their way to violently exclude black Americans, if white Americans can still benefit from those policies, and they are, because on average, the average white household has at least $190,000, okay, net worth. Black Americans like $23,000 and declining. There's a reason for that. That gap has existed for as long as this country has existed, and it's getting wider. So if you can still benefit from government policies I am still hurting from those government policies. Even if you are a wealthy freedman or foundational Black American, you are still not as wealthy as you should be. You are still old, because reparations is not about poverty. Reparations is not solving poverty. Reparations is about this government paying a debt to a group that they harm, as they have done for a lot of other groups. People who were exposed to radiation are still collecting a check right now. They were exposed to radiation during America's era of nuclear testing. And in the early 90s, they introduced the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. Those people who were physically harmed by radiation exposure, some of them had died already. Their descendants are collecting a check. Slow Joe Crow Biden just renewed the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, and they're still collecting a check because they are part of a group that was harmed. The family members of the people who were killed in 9/11, they get all types of benefits. The people who were taken hostage by the Iranians, some of them died by the time reparations came along. Their descendants are collecting a check because they are members of a group that was harmed. Reparations America is harm-based, and you have to prove by your lineage, your status, that you are a member of that group that was harmed. That's how it's done. And let's talk about this thing. Oh, and by the way, I found the quote here. I'm going to share it. I found the quote here. Let's talk about this thing here where we are not Americans. I'm going to address that soon, but let me read the quote here. Let me share the screen for y'all. Because I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this. And this is the thing you hear in Pan-African circles a lot. Not all Pan-Africans now. No. But you do hear in some Pan-African circles where other groups of Black people, they might, and to be fair, Dr. Umar Johnson calls out groups of Black people throughout the world. He really does. But in Pan-African circles, there's always this level of enthusiasm, this level of vigor, where when it comes to Black Americans, there's always a special level of disdain that they seem to have for us, where we are going to get criticized more than any other group. Like we've done something which we deserve to be criticized, or we have not done something that we should have done for which we deserve to be criticized. That's going to stop. But here's the quote from the Abraham Lincoln. Y'all check this out, okay? In 1865, President Lincoln said, without the military help of the Black freedmen, the war against the South could not have been won. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me read that again. 1865, President Lincoln said, without the military help of the Black Africans, the Black Caribbeans, freedmen. And Abraham Lincoln was no friend of the Blacks, like they try to make it seem. He wasn't just giving us credit because he loved us so much. He had to admit it. The Union was getting their tails whipped until freedmen, Black people who were Americans, who had escaped slavery, had bought their freedom, which if you have to buy your freedom, then you technically ain't free, but that's a whole other conversation. But we're still at risk of being sold back into slavery, either by being captured or sometimes by punishment, or sometimes being sent out of the country to Liberia, which was a whole mess. I'm going to get to that a little later. He said those people helped win the war. Not Africans, not Caribbean. These were Americans. And by the way, I thought I had addressed this already. By 1850, the majority of Black Americans, nearly all, were third, fourth, fifth generation Black Americans. But I want to share my source. For those who don't know, the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History, they are known for their research in social studies. I've used them in my teachings. And look, I was never going to teach no whitewash stuff in my classroom, ever. I was always going to teach the truth. And I've used their material a lot. And this is something I came across even before, I really started getting big about delineating, which I always knew there was a difference. But before I came across the reparations movement, I used a lot of their materials. And I always remember this. And this is what I cited Dr. Umar Johnson. It said the United States enslaved persons were more generations removed from Africa than those in the Caribbean. In the 19th century, the majority of enslaved in the British Caribbean and Brazil were born in Africa. In contrast, by 1850, most U.S. enslaved persons were third, fourth, or fifth generation Americans. But y'all, it gets better. That's by 1850. But did you know as early as the 1700s, there were Black Americans who were already second generation? Because the truth of the matter is the U.S. received a very small percentage of those who were captured from the African continent. And then people like to say, well, they came from the Caribbean. Wrong. Originally, in states like South Carolina, yes, the first source of Black people were enslaved were from places like Barbados. But eventually, the Caribbean had a booming sugarcane industry that was booming and expanding, and they needed an influx of people because the death rate for people enslaved in the Caribbean was far higher than in the United States of America. So they did start importing people who were enslaved directly from the continent of Africa. But the U.S. will only receive a very small percentage of, and this sounds disgusting to even say, of the people who were sold and then brought over to the Americas. The U.S. slave population grew mainly by domestic breeding of people who were enslaved, and then the domestic slave trade in the U.S. was far, far, far larger and had a higher capacity than the transatlantic slave trade. So it's not surprising because the U.S. system was very different than that from the Caribbean, from South America. But I'm going to read this to you all right here. And this is from New Jersey. Now, we know with all the stuff that's going on in schools, this is, in states like Florida, where they are, and by the way, I'm going to say it right now, I have said for the longest, and I said at the FBA Expo that Tariq held, y'all, we got to get our kids out these damn schools. We really do. We got to get our kids out these schools, y'all. We say they're taking our history out of the schools. Y'all, our history was never in the schools. They were never teaching it to begin with. They're just being more blatant about it now, which I like, because we don't seem to always understand subtle anti-Blackness. So one thing about America, they will always get very blatant with their anti-Blackness, because they always have. But they will subdue it and be subtle with it and trick us into thinking things have gotten better. And then they'll start getting blatant again. So now they're just being blatant with it. But they were never teaching our history to begin with. They were always teaching BS like, oh, they were enslaved laborers. Oh, they were fed and given clothes, but they would just work in the harsh conditions. They always tried to downplay and whitewash chattel slavery. And then let the school system tell it after slavery. Everything was great then. Everyone was equal. Black people just didn't work hard. That's why white America got far ahead. Everything was good until the 90s or the 80s. Black Americans started listening to rap music. That's type of stuff they teach. And I haven't quite heard that last one, but I've heard things close enough to it. So we need to get our kids out of our schools, out of these public schools, and start our own, which is why we need our reparations. Which is why I applaud what Dr. Umar Johnson is trying to do in his school, which is why it's crazy he will say something like he doesn't care about reparations, because for a man who says that we need to own our own land and have our own institutions, which we do, who could be against that? The reason we don't have it, doctor, is because we never got the reparations we are due. I'm going to get into that a little later. But let me stick with this point here, because y'all know I can go round and round and come back and leave again. So let me read this to y'all right here. This is from the New Jersey Department of Education website. Just to show y'all that there are multiple sources that say this. Okay? Right here. By the end of the colonial period, which was, 1776, Blacks numbered about 500,000 and constituted their largest proportion of the total American population ever, nearly 20%. Now, we know that's BS. We know we are around 20% now, if not more. The census put us at almost 15% now. That was back in 2021. Then the census said they undercounted us by 3 to 4%. Okay? And trust me, the census, if you read the census 2010, they undercounted. They're undercounting. They originally said they undercounted us in 2010 by 800,000. Come to find out, it was almost 4 million. So the census has said so far they undercounted by 3 to 4%. Other groups who I don't necessarily like these organizations, but there are good people in them, like the NAACP, National Urban League. One thing they do is they stay on the Census Bureau, and they have said the census has undercounted their undercount of us once again. And they are saying the census has probably undercounted us by as many as, I forgot the number. It's a big number. I don't want to overstate it, but it's a big number. It's somewhere like, I think, 5 to 7 million. Okay? But that's a side point. But look at what it says here. Since most were native-born Americans, many by this time have become hyphenated Americans in the true sense of the word. Okay? In varying degrees in different parts of the colonies, they have undergone a culturative process that had created a new cultural group of people, African Americans, foundational Black Americans, freedmen after 1865, and slavery is emancipated. This process involved the melding of the different traditional African cultures into a Pan-African culture and the retention of some aspects of this culture. Okay, so we retain the practices of our forefathers who came from the continent. For those of us who have forefathers from the continent, as do I. I never said I have not. But we also develop our own new culture, as this is here is saying. But notice, even in the 1700s, enslaved Africans, quote unquote, in America, had already became and developed an American identity. And already most Black people in America by the end of colonization were already at least second generation Americans. So it's not a stretch to believe that there's other research showing that by 1850, we were third, fourth, or even fifth generation Americans. So no, I'm not an African. I am not. And I'm not going to be shamed when I say that. I am not an African. I am a Black American. And Dr. Umar Johnson is opening his school. I believe it's called the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey School, which, by the way, we should all be trying to open our own schools because that's where indoctrination happens. It really is. But let's look at something that Frederick Douglass said about whether Black Americans are Americans or Africans. Let me find this quote here. I hope I can find this one. Let's see if I can find this quote here. Let's see what Frederick Douglass said about whether Black Americans are Africans, Americans, or both maybe. Let's see what he said. And this is something I remember from before I even came across the reparations movement and we got into delineation. This is stuff that I remember from my days of teaching social studies, which I still do. Okay, which I still do. Let me see if I can find this quote. And y'all, if y'all in the chat, y'all know I'm not used to this, so y'all gotta bear with me. If y'all telling me in the chat, I'm not even seeing it, so I'm sorry. Okay. Frederick Douglass in January 9th, 1894. Let's see what Frederick Douglass said. All right. What did Frederick Douglass say about us being Africans? Would he agree with that? Well, he said we're Africans in America, but we're not Americans. What did Frederick Douglass, one of the people after whom Dr. Umar Johnson has named his school, what did Frederick Douglass say? Let's read this right here. Let's read this right here. This is from Frederick Douglass, January 9th, 1894, The Folly of Colonization. And give you the long story short, y'all know Abraham Lincoln had planned to pretty much, I don't even want to say export because that sounds so dehumanizing. He pretty much had planned to remove forcibly all black people from the United States of America. So like I said, Abraham Lincoln was no friend of the blacks, like they try to make him seem. Okay? You can say he was not as bad as a lot of the white people of his time in America were, but he was definitely not our quote-unquote friend. Frederick Douglass was strongly against it. And he maintained those sentiments when people, usually white people who hated black people, would try to insinuate that black Americans were not Americans. Frederick Douglass' attitude was like, what? We are the quintessential Americans. We are the most Americans. Here's what Frederick Douglass said. He said, it is the proposition to colonize the colored people of America and Africa or somewhere else. He said, happily, this scheme will be defeated. He called it a scheme. He said he was happy it would be defeated. He said it is all nonsense to talk about the removal of 8 million of the American people from their homes in America to Africa. This is Frederick Douglass. Dr. Umar Johnson, your school is named after this man. This is what Frederick Douglass is saying. This is Frederick Douglass. These are his words. Prove me wrong. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Oh, wait. Hold on, y'all. Let me put this in the chat. I'm so engaged in this. I'm finally seeing the chat. Okay, let's keep going. What else did Frederick Douglass say? Okay. He said, they know, or they ought to know, that it would take more money than the cost of the late war to transport even 1/2 of the colored people of the United States to Africa. Frederick Douglass was pretty much saying, if you think the Civil War caused all types of bloodshed, remember the Civil War was an extremely bloody, violent war. Up until World War I, I think the Civil War had caused more American lives than any other conflict. Okay? Any other conflict to wars after that combined, up until I think we get to World War II or something like that. I forgot. Don't quote me. The point of the matter is, Frederick Douglass was saying, if you thought the Civil War was bad, he said, try to tell black Americans to try to take them and send them to Africa. He said, try it and watch what will happen. That's what Frederick Douglass was saying. Let's keep reading. He says, whether intentionally or not, they are, as I think, simply trifling with an afflicted people. Frederick Douglass said, y'all need to pretty much pay these people their damn reparations. Pay us what you owe us and stop trying to find ways to avoid doing right by us. That's pretty much what America does right now. When black Americans, it's not hard to figure out reparations. We have the money, okay? They've done it for other groups. It will make America a far richer nation. A study done by Citigroup, which is one of the largest financial institutions in the world, said that because of anti-black American hate, America since the year 2000 has lost almost $20 trillion. That's just because of anti-black hate. Okay? So imagine how much richer America would be. We are the people who built Black Wall Streets out of nothing, not just the one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's the most popular one, but we had Black Wall Streets all throughout America. We were pretty much illiterate, unprotected, and we had Black Wall Streets. The Black Wall Street of Tulsa, Oklahoma alone, and the value of the dollar that day was worth $69 million. How much were the Black Wall Streets in South Carolina, my home state, worth? The one in Columbia, the one in Charleston, the one up there in Aiken or Hamburg, South Carolina. 3 in South Carolina that I know of alone. Louisiana had a Black Wall Street. Mississippi, Florida had Overtown. Virginia, North Carolina had a few. Kansas, Black Wall Streets all over. Mississippi, what's another state? that had a black Detroit, Georgia. Black Wall Streets all throughout America. If we did that from nothing, if we could take not even having a penny and turn it into almost $70 million in the damn 1920s, imagine what we do with the money we are owed. Let me get back to Frederick Douglass, though. Yo, I can talk about this all night. Anyway. Frederick Douglass was like, stop playing around with black Americans. You've already done to them unforgivable harms. Give them the justice they are owed. He said the only excuse they can make for the measure is that there is no hope for the Negro hair and the colored people in America owe something to Africa. That's what Frederick Douglass is saying. That's what pretty much, and no offense to my Pan-Africans who support lineage based reparations, that's what a lot of Pan-Africans do. They act like black Americans owe Africa something. And we don't. We don't owe the African continent nothing. Let me tell you, I used to be the biggest Pan-African. But even when I was at my most Pan-African, I never denigrated black Americans, ever. There's a video. Give me 1 second. I used to be the biggest Pan-African, the biggest, but I never degraded my own people. And I always recognized that, hey, I'm a black American. And underneath the black American Freeman FBA subgroups, I'm Gullah Geechee. I always acknowledged my identity, and I was always proud of my heritage, even when I was the biggest Pan-African. You know what started turning me off? A few things. One, when I went to Kenya, and I was at this tourist attraction called Bomas. And Bomas is a museum in Kenya where they show a variety of the homes of the indigenous black people there. And there were these white tourists there. I could tell they were American. I could tell by the way they spoke and the way they dressed. And they was like, oh, I wouldn't put my dog in that. And the kids were just sitting there letting these people laugh and scold them and, degrade their history as if Europe didn't have people living in caves, drinking piss and howling at the moon, as if Europe didn't collapse into a damn long dark ages while the continent of Africa was flourishing. But they were just sitting there taking it. Now, I've been to other countries that are not African. It doesn't matter how much they rely on tourism. They don't usually let tourists come in their nations and insult them. They were just sitting there letting it happen. So finally, I said something. When the lady was like, I wouldn't let my dog, because they were already talking trash. When the white lady was like, I wouldn't let my dog sleep in that. I said, woman, your grandfather lived in something like that. And people busted out laughing. The kid's going to tell me you need to have tougher skin. I said, no, that's your problem right there. Your skin is tougher than a fucking elephant. Letting people come here and mock y'all. Then, y'all know, those who follow me on Twitter, I already showed you the newspaper article I wrote. Well, I wrote an editorial, and they published it in the Kenyan newspaper. When I went to the Swahili city-states, they had these amazing ruins. The black Kenyans telling me the white Arabs, not the black Arabs, because the Arab is technically an ethnicity like Hispanic. You have black Hispanic, you got black Arabs. They ain't gonna talk about some the olive-skinned white Arabs built the Swahili city-states. And it was not true. But the Kenyan, my friend who was Kenyan was with me, he's sitting there letting it happen. I'm like, you got two black Kenyan daughters. You want to sit there and let this man insult your people? So I wrote an editorial, and it was published in the Daily Nation, which is the main paper in Kenya. And I had a flood of Kenyans write me and thank me and said that they call out their own people about how docile they are, about how they let Europeans and white American agents walk all over them. These are what black Kenyans were telling me. And they said that they've given up on their own people because they don't have no type of fight them. They said we only know how to fight each other. And here's the proof. When I was in Kenya, and I loved Kenya, loved it. I usually want to go home after a week in the country. I want to stay in Kenya longer. But they was about to have an election. My friend was like, we got to go. I was like, why? He was like, it's about to get bad in Kenya. He said, you don't want to be in Kenya when politics happen. Dr. Umar Johnson, that's tribalism. When you have tribes who slaughter each other, other black tribes who have been through a history of shared oppression, and they slaughter each other during election season. That happens in Kenya all the time. Now, it hasn't been as bad in the most recent years, but like a decade ago or so, something like 57 people were murdered because of political violence. That's tribalism. Black Americans, because of the mental trauma, the mass incarceration, the crack epidemic, the extreme poverty, and centuries of being terrorized by the most powerful country in the world, when Black Americans do have intraracial violence, that happens with all groups. White Americans kill white Americans, Black Americans kill Black Americans. The truth of the matter is, when a Black American kills a Black American, it's going to be something stupid over a lack of resources, but sometimes it's a Black American who's being wrongly arrested, because 60%, or close to 60% of those wrongly arrested, those wrongly convicted of a crime in America are Black. Black Americans aren't slaughtering each other over tribal differences. It happened in Kenya. When I went to Ethiopia, right now Ethiopia, Dr. Umar Johnson, he just spoke there. They're having it's settled down a lot, but they're still having a damn civil war. You have never had a tribal civil war among Black Americans, ever. So that thing in Kenya kind of turned me off, but I kind of swallowed and said, whatever. Went to Nigeria. I loved it. But the thing is, I was in Nigeria. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn about my ancestors, because I acknowledge I have African ancestors. I'm not African, but my ancestors were. And the reason they're not Africans anymore is partially because of Africans, the ones who partner with the Europeans. Because like the Europeans, who always have tribal wars, World War I, World War II, those are just really extremely globally violent European tribal wars, because no one does tribal wars like the Europeans do. Well, Africans having tribal wars too. And instead of getting on cold and realizing that the Europeans were about to take over all of them, and the Europeans eventually did, they made the slave trade their main trade. They made the enslavement of people their main commodity, and their Trans-Africa trade network collapsed, which is one of the reasons why the poverty is still so deep in the African continent. One, of course, the states of colonization. Funny thing is, though, you say that some African immigrants, when Black Americans, they come to America, oh, how can a person not succeed in America? Why Black America is suffering? We can understand that they are still going through colonization, or the lazy colonization. But when we mention that we're going through over 400 years of the legacy of colonization, because America was a colony too. We are going through chattel slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, lynch mobs, war being poisoned, you name it, and we were never the majority in America. They don't understand that. They tell us there's no excuse. But when we say, okay, well, why is your country in shambles and so impoverished? Oh, they got excuses. We can't make excuses. And the truth of the matter is, we have done pretty well in spite of us not being the majority here and having no one come to our back. But let me continue. The thing with Nigeria, some of them were talking about wanting to come to America, wanting to go to Canada. And I was like, okay. But the thing that really turned me off, I was in Ghana. This was in 2020. So I was already pretty much in the reparations movement. And I was talking with my tour guide, a great guy. And he said, you know, I get asked all the time, who's my favorite group of people to take on a tour? And I was like, oh, okay, who's your favorite? He's like, honestly, it's the group that gets on my nerves the most too. He's like, Black Americans. He's like, I love Black Americans. He's like, y'all are funny. He's like, y'all treat me like family. He was like, I really love Black Americans. And I was like, yeah, you know, I said, get on my nerves, but you know, yeah, we good people. But he was like, but I do have one thing I want to say. And I was like, what's that, Baba? That, you know, a lot of them call us Baba. I was like, what's that, Baba? He said, when Black Americans have the money and wealth, they never come and partner with us here in Africa. And I just listened. He was like, they'll go to Europe, they'll go to Asia, South America, Caribbean. He was like, and some will come to Africa. He was like, but it's not just coming here for a tour, it's partnering with us. Say, hey, let me give y'all some money, build it up, and we have it together. And I said to him, what do you know about what Black Americans have been through in America? He was like, oh, I know, there's a lot of racism there. I said, yeah, but what do you know? I said, have you ever heard of Flint, Michigan? And he said, I think I had. I said, have you ever heard of Denmark, South Carolina? I said, those are just two places in America that are majority Black that don't even have clean water. And I said to him, because at this time I was already in the reparations movement, and I already had a lot of statistics to match things that I already knew. I said, do you know that over 20% of Black Americans have no wealth at all? Like, their wealth is in the negatives. They have a deficit. I said another nearly 5 million have less than $10,000 disposable income a year. I said, now what is Ghana known for? He was like, oh, chocolate, gold. I said, exactly. I said, do y'all have any gold mines that y'all are willing to share the wealth with Black Americans? I said, we have copper here. We have, diamond mines. I said, you have the rubber plantations. I was like, how much of that wealth of these minerals that the whole world needs to keep the modern industry, how much of that wealth has been shared with Black Americans? And then I said to him, I understand that y'all don't own your resources. I said, I've never come over here saying, why have y'all not done for us? I said, but now I'm going to ask you, if you can say that we don't come and support y'all and partner with y'all, then I can ask, where were y'all when we needed y'all? For 400 years, chattel slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, where were y'all? It's always been more of y'all than us. Where were y'all? I said, and when I was in Nigeria, I said this to him. One of the tour guides apologized to me. And I was like, why are you apologizing? He was like, because I feel that Africa is never going to have peace until we apologize for our role in the transatlantic slave trade. This is what a Nigerian guy said to me, and I have his photos. I dare someone to say I'm lying, because he's a singer over in Lagos. He was like, we have to own up to our role. He was like, I feel that's a part of the curse why we still are dealing with these Europeans, because we've never acknowledged and have atoned for our role. Guess what, y'all? I was offended, because that was in 2018 when I went to Nigeria. I was offended. I was like, don't be taking up for the Europeans. Don't try to downplay what they did. And he was standing his ground. He was like, no. He's like, we got to talk about what we did. We can't say we're brothers and did not apologize and acknowledge that we did our brothers wrong, that we have not been our brother's keeper. This was a Nigerian man. So I said that to Baba. I said, where were y'all? Where? I said, where are you now? I said, where are you now? I said, I have seen some African leaders in some countries have apologized for their role in the slave trade. They will say it wasn't all tribes, it wasn't all civilizations. Some fought against it. First of all, that part irritates me, even when I was Pan-African. Because, yeah, you fought against the slave trade, but you weren't fighting to save us. You were fighting to save you. You were fighting because now you done enslaved and sold people. Now they were coming for you. So now you were fighting against the slave trade because now it's about to hurt you. So you weren't fighting for us, okay? That part always irritated me. But they will say it wasn't all, but there are some African leaders who have literally said Black Americans, Black people in the Caribbean, South America, the United States, we are sorry for what we did. They have literally said that. I said, so if anything, I should be looking to you. I should be saying to y'all, Ghanaians, why have y'all not invested in us? Where's the land for us? Where's the minerals for us? And that was the end of me being Pan-African right there. That was the end of it. And then I had to apologize to my ancestors, my Black American ancestors. I always loved my culture. I always loved being a Black American, always. But I was more fascinated with my African roots because it was not taught. School, we was always taught about European history. So when I would do my own research and to learn about these African civilizations and all the advancements that were there, it was like learning about a new world that I had never knew existed. So it wasn't that I was not appreciative of being a Black American. I was always proud of being a Black American. You could ask my mother and them, okay? You could ask them. They used to call me Malcolm X. Not Malcolm X, Malcolm X. Because I was always on my being proud to be Black American. Even when I was a kid, they used to call me Malcolm X, okay? But I had to apologize to my American ancestors for not being as invested in telling their stories and learning more about them. And a part of that was just me being young. You know, I always grew up, my teachers always said, y'all Gullah Geechee, y'all, we are special people. We are special people. They used to have us do our little baskets, our little nets. I could never do them. And I can't even toss the fish, the crab nets we do. Every time it blows back on me, they used to have us sing our little folk songs. They used to show us the grass to do our sweet grass baskets. Used to teach us words from the Gullah Geechee language. But my life was Gullah Geechee, and it still is. Okay? My cousins had the marsh tacky, the type of horses we have here that you can ride through the swamps. My cousin and I, we would do our low country boils every Friday around a steel barrel with water and boil the crab and the corn and the shrimp and the potatoes. Okay, my Aunt Rita would tell me stories about Dr. Buzzard, the famous root doctor here. We talked about hags riding you. Rice, everything, still is. Shrimp, my life is good. I didn't even be taught about it in school. But when you are a kid, you don't always appreciate what you have. And I decided to be a little easier on myself. That's probably what it was. But I did feel bad. I was like, all this time, I've been so invested in learning about my African roots that I have not invested as much as I should into my American identity, my American culture, okay, my Americanness. And that's what turned me off the Pan-African. It was this sense that we owe them something. So imagine how surprised I was when I, in 2021, teaching a class, came across that part. Now, I remember Frederick Douglass from teaching history in the past. I knew Abraham Lincoln wanted to send us all to the Caribbean and whatnot. But when I came across this part, I had never noticed that Frederick Douglass was like, Black Americans don't owe Africa nothing. Okay? Black Americans don't owe Africa nothing. So, Dr. Umar Johnson, the man. Oh, let's read this one here. To have a home, this is Frederick Douglass. I'm going to end this right here. To have a home, the Negro must have a country, and he is an enemy to the moral progress of the Negro, whether he knows it or not, who calls upon him to break up his home in this country for an uncertain home in Africa. This is Frederick Douglass. He said, anyone that tells Black Americans to leave America and go to Africa is an enemy of the American people. Your school is named after Frederick Douglass, after Umar Johnson. These are his words, not mine. Dr. Umar Johnson Frederick Douglass would resent anyone saying to him that he's an African and not an American. Let's talk about that some, because I'm tired of all this. And let me say, I'm responding to the message, not the messenger. But I did offer to have a debate with Dr. Umar Johnson. Originally, I said, let's have a debate. And then the guy who was setting it was like, he declined that we just have a discussion. So I said, okay, let's just have an interview. So I feel a debate is not acrimonious. Debates are necessary. Debates are organized. They should be intellectual discourse, and debates help us grow as a people. I don't think a debate is a negative thing. But because he declined the debate, Dr. Umar Johnson, I said, let's have a discussion. I did an interview. And I feel I kept my interviewer energy. Ms. Giselle, my co-host, kept the interviewer energy. And Dr. Umar Johnson was a gracious guest for the most part until the end when he started over-talking us and wouldn't let us make our points. But I still want to be an accommodating host because I'm new to this. And look, y'all, a lot of things Dr. Umar Johnson says I strongly agree with. He is right about us being individualistic. He's even right about how being tribalistic can hurt us. He's right. But delineation and us focusing on Black Americans, Freeman FA focusing on us reparation, that's not tribalistic. I'll tell you what's tribalistic. Tribalistic, and no one better test me on this either, is when historically we've had Black people come to America and we'll say, hey, Black man, my Black brother, my Black sister. They say, I'm not Black. I'm Jamaican. I'm Haitian. I'm Kenyan, whatever. And we will be shocked. Because as Black Americans, we was like, you Black, I'm Black, we the same. These other Black groups were letting it be known. Hell no. I'm Jamaican. I'm not no Black. Now, they weren't saying that their race was not Black. They were pretty much delineating and letting us know, hey, hold on now. Just because I look like you don't mean I'm one of you. So now Black Americans have said, you know what? Right. Damn right. And then I come to find out Black Americans have been doing that all along. When Marcus Garvey was in America, Black people in America was like, hey, he's Jamaican. And when he said that thing about Black people shouldn't expect full rights in the train because we didn't help build the railroad, when the railroads were only built because of us, the Chinese only came along and built the little bit that we had refused to continue building for free. People were like, how dare this man who's not one of us talk about what we don't deserve? So our ancestors were already saying, hey, we all Black, but you're not Black like us. We kind of adopted, because I don't think there's any people more Pan-African than Black Americans, because the Africans are sure as hell not Pan-African. Not by and large, they're not. They are not. They are not. Because if any place should be the beacon of Pan-Africanists, it should be the African continent. And it does not exist there. Does not. There's tribal conflict galore. And when I say tribal conflict, I'm not saying they're slaughtering and killing each other, but there's a lot of animosity between a lot of the tribes. In Nigeria, you got the Nigerians in the Delta who want to break away. You got the Yoruba who want to have their region of Nigeria. You got the North who feel that they have their own region. You got the conflict between you got the House of Fulani herdsmen, the conflict they have with other people. They are not united, okay, and a quote unquote African identity. So we are not, I am not ever, no one's going to shame me. And you can launch thoughts on, oh, we hate Africans and Caribbeans. That don't hurt my feelings at all. You can say what you want to say. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be gaslit. I'm not going to keep responding to a false accusation, because when you keep responding to a false accusation, you validate the false accusation in a way. It distracts you. You're using facts and intelligence and data, and then they just throw out some BS lie, and now you got to respond to a BS lie. No, I'm not doing that. I will not entertain false accusations of me be hating Africans, Caribbeans. If that's how you think I feel, good luck. Go ahead. Feel the way you want to feel. I ain't apologizing for delineating. I'm not apologizing for being a proud Black American. No one tells a Jamaican they can't be a proud Jamaican. No one tells a Brazilian they can't be a proud Brazilian. I will not be told that I can't be a proud American. Frederick Douglass would be ashamed of me if I did. My great-grandfather, Quash Fripp, who fought in the Civil War, will be ashamed of me if I deny my Americanness. My great-grandmother, Nana, who died when she was 101 in 2015, all in her right mind until like 6 months before she died. She will curse me if I told her I'm not an American. These are people who grew up being told, go back to Africa, being treated as if they're some type of immigrant group, when they're the reason America exists. There is no America without Black Americans. How you going to tell me I'm not from here when here would it be here if not for my people being here? There was no America before we arrived. There is only America because we're here. And if there's ever no us, there will be no America. I am not going to insult my ancestors, my parents, by saying I'm not an American. Even during the days of slavery, this country was trying to force Black Americans who were free, quotation marks, to go to Liberia. The majority of Black Americans said, hell no, we're not going to no Liberia, we staying right here. That was during the days of slavery, where a free Black person could easily be captured and sold into a slave state. Okay? Even then, our ancestors said, this is our country. Haiti. We don't talk about this part a lot. There was a push, y'all, to have our ancestors go to Haiti. And when I say ours, because most Black Americans, our ancestors were here probably at least by the early 1800s. Mine, I've been able to go back at least to the mid 1700s. Okay? Mid to late 1700s. Haiti had gotten its independence. Now, let me shut this down too. Because you got most Haitians, first of all, I've been to Haiti, love Haitians, had a great time. But some Haitians have this thing where they think that they inspired us to fight for our freedoms. What? Huh? Black Haiti, whoa. Haiti was Hispaniola, the island that's Haiti, Dominican Republic, was like 90% Black. In the early 1800s, you revolted, and after 10 years, you won. Black Americans had been revolting. We were never the majority. We had been revolting as early when it was the British colonies in the 1600s, and we were never the majority here. The Gullah Wars, or some people call them the Seminole Wars, some people call them the Yamasee Wars. This is my subgroup of Black American, Freeman FBA, us Gullah Geechee people. We made Florida into a pretty much a free damn state. Spanish Florida. The only reason the Spain kept Florida for as long as they did was because the Black Americans, the Gullah Geechee people from Georgia mainly, and then from South Carolina, we protected Spanish Florida because they said if you got to Spain, well, Spanish Florida, you were free as long as you protected the Spanish crown. And the English, the British, and the French were afraid to come up in Florida, knowing the Gullah Geechee people who then became the Black Seminoles were there. That started in the early 1700s, long before the Haitian Revolution. So Haitians, nothing against you unless you're a tether or a raccoon, then sure. But if you're not one of those, I have nothing against you. But we're going to stop this whole, some other people taught Black Americans how to fight. We the only group that when we fight, no one fights for us. We fight for everyone else. And then when it's time for people to fight for us, we look around. We fight it alone. Ethiopia attacked by the Italians, Black Americans who had just gone through bloody summer, racial massacres. We went over to Ethiopia, and it was a Black American pilot who taught Ethiopians how to fly. The reason Ethiopian Airlines exists right now. It was Black Americans who organized and in large part helped put pressure on America to get South Africa to drop apartheid. Black Americans, some of the first freedom fighters of the African continent against the colonizers, went to HBCUs, educated by Black Americans, like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Nigeria. They acknowledge, if you read their writings, how they were inspired by Black Americans' fight. When HIV and AIDS was ravaging the continent, and we know it was brought to the continent by these missionaries from Europe and places like that. But when they pretty much brought that disease to the continent and did not bring any of the resources needed to treat the diseases they had brought, Black Americans, singers like Michael Jackson, got together, donated millions, billions of dollars, helped fight HIV and AIDS, send food, send water. When Haiti was invaded by America, both times, it was Black American soldiers who refused to participate and organized to get America out of Haiti? Name one example of a country's government going to bat for Black Americans like that, an African country, a Caribbean country. The only example I can think of really is Haiti. And this is where I get to this part. When Haiti did the revolution, Haiti did have in their constitution that if you get to Haiti and you're Black, you're free. Okay? But Haiti was struggling. France was economically starving Haiti. So, Black people in America, some Black people was like, hey, we have a free Black country in the Western Hemisphere. We must support Haiti, y'all. This is a chance to help Black people all over the world. Once again, Black Americans being Freeman FBA, being called on to stand up for everyone else. Do you know that Black Americans, even though Haiti was free, refused to go to Haiti? It took, at that, I don't know what value will be now, but at that time, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to convince Black Americans to go to Haiti just to help Haiti become a strong Black nation. So finally, some Black Americans went. It was like tens of thousands eventually. Guess what happened, y'all? Most of them came back. They came back to America with all the problems America had. Chattel slavery. They came back to a country where Black people were enslaved than stay in Haiti. A lot of them had the attitude already that, hey, we're going to help Haiti out, but America's our country and we ain't leaving. So if our people did not deny their Americanness, if they were proud Black Americans, when America had chattel slavery, had Black people in bondage, 95% of us, who are we to tell our ancestors, you did all that for nothing? You were stupid. We're not Americans, not me. I'm here. Y'all know my hometown's Richmond, South Carolina. Savannah, Georgia's 30 minutes from me. This is the home of 40 Acres and a Mule, my area. This is the heart of 40 Acres and a Mule territory. I have land that my ancestor, Quash Fripp, my great-great-great-grandfather, my great-great-great-grandmother, Molly Fripp, they paid it off a long time ago. We still pay taxes on land that we should get, that we should have, and not pay any taxes on at a minimum and get paid back what my ancestors had spent. We have land. I have land all throughout the low country of South Carolina, from Port Royal experiment and Special Field Order 15 that was taken from them, but the Freedmen's Bureau helped them get back and purchase. When General Sherman met with those 20 Black preachers in Savannah, Georgia, General Sherman said to them, hey, what can we do to make things right with the Negro? It's not because he loved us so much. He was just tired of all these Black people following him around. He was like, hey, there's a lot of Black people. What are we going to do with all these Black people, y'all? That's what happened. That's the whole other story. What did our ancestors say? Right here in Savannah, Georgia, I visit Madison Square all the time. It's only 25 minutes. This part of Savannah, downtown, is only 25 minutes from me. They said, did they say, send us back to Africa? We want to go home to Africa? They said, give us the land we have cultivated. And guess where? Special Field Order 15 took land from Charleston, South Carolina, just an hour from me, to 30 miles inland, all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida, 30 miles inland. This is we call it today the Gullah Geechee Corridor. They did not ask to go back to Africa. My point, Black Americans, Freeman FBA, our ancestors have never let the fact that the American government has treated us awfully, they've never let that determine our Americanness. Imagine, so let's say, because I've heard people, some Pan-Africans make the argument, this country never treated y'all right. Y'all ain't no Americans. First of all, you shut up. You don't tell me who I am. You don't tell me who I am. However, white people in America, the bigots, which a lot of them are, all of them no, but a lot of them are, and the ones who will be offended by me saying this are the ones who are the bigots. They said that we were less than animals. They said we were uncivilized. They used to say things like the only good Negro is a dead Negro, all type of disgusting stuff like that. So because they treated us like less than animals, does that make us less than animals? Huh? We've never let the way this country treat us dictate who we are. So just because this nation has not treated us like full-blown American citizens, that does not mean we are less or we are not full-blown American citizens. Anyone saying that because America does not treat us like full-blown American citizens, that means we are not full-blown American citizens. That means you are everything that the anti-black bigots and white supremacists say you are. If they treat you like you're less than animal, that means you are less than animal. No, my ancestors, my lineage, we have always said, America, you can say we're less than animal, but guess what? We are the true Americans. We are the most humane human beings, and you are going to honor and respect that. That's our legacy of not letting anyone tell us that we are less than, not letting anyone treat us that we are less than. So no, just because this country's government has not treated us right, has treated us less than Americans, does not make me less than American. Because if you want to see the best example of a true patriotic American, right here, they're going to look like me. They're going to look like a lot of y'all watching tonight. Black Americans are the truest, the most quintessential patriotic American. And no one, black or otherwise, is going to tell me that I'm not. Do you tell people in the Dominican Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, that they're not Congolese? Because their government has treated them horribly. Do you tell Nigerians they're not Nigerians? Because their government has treated them horribly. Do you tell South Africans they're not South Africans? Their government has treated them horribly. Do you tell Kenyans they're not Kenyans? Their government has treated them horribly. Do you tell Jamaicans they're not Jamaicans? Their government has treated them horribly. Do you tell Bajans they're not Bajans? Their government has treated them horribly. A lot of black people, we can't have it both ways. You can't say anti-blackness is global and then say to black Americans, because America, the American government is anti-black, that we aren't Americans. If that's the case, then a Nigerian is not Nigerian, because Nigeria has treated Nigerians awfully. Okay? The Jamaica has treated Jamaicans awfully. Look at the poverty a lot of them are living in. Anti-blackness is tried even by black people. You don't run from a system that owed you. You take over that system and get what you're owed. And by the way, let's talk about that. This whole thing about we don't save and we don't know what to do with our money. We need financial literacy. Shut up. Shut up. Study of consumer purchases in the Consumer Federation of America. Y'all look those two sources up. I'm not going to go to the study. Y'all look them up yourself. They have proven time and time again that black Americans, in spite of having the least amount of wealth, black Americans save more than any other group. So we have the least amount of wealth, not because we should have the most, but because of anti-blackness, the fact that we haven't gotten our reparations yet, we have the least amount of wealth, but we saved the most. With Donald Trump's stimulus checks, okay, that were nothing. Black Americans started more new businesses than any other group. Look it up. Do y'all want me to find it? Please, or I get exhausted having to look up these things sometimes. Just look it up. Or check out my Twitter, Marcel, digit 4, Congress. I'm going to post it on there because I did already. Black Americans started more new businesses than any other group. Think about it. What group in America is more entrepreneurial than black Americans? Huh? Who? What group any other group that come here, they open businesses. At best, they open businesses because they come to America that's no longer on paper. That means sanctioned, completely sanctioned by the government, racist. Black Americans have been opening businesses for centuries, having whole Wall Streets in spite of America terrorizing us. Who's more entrepreneurial? Name one group that has to fight the American government to open a business, that has to fight to get the business open, that has to see their business burnt down by fire, flooded by water, water disconnected, rain, a railroad put through it, has to rebuild again and again and again. Only Black Americans have done that. So ain't no group more entrepreneurial than us. Even today, we shouldn't even have to go and get loans because we should have our damn reparations. But even today, a Black person with perfect credit, good income, is in some measures 60 to 70 times more likely to be denied a loan than a white person with bad credit, very little income. And yet we still start more new businesses than any other group. Our businesses fail quicker, however, than any other fail the quickest because we have the least amount of wealth. And businesses always go through a period where they're not bringing in the income that it can possibly make eventually. So we're going to stop this whole we don't know how to use our money. But first of all, even if Black Americans were frivolous with our money, even if we were wasteful, we are still owed reparations any damn way. Hey, y'all, find me that study where the Holocaust survivors were asked for a business plan on how they're going to spend their money before they got their check. Y'all got that study? It doesn't exist. Find me the study where these Native American tribes are being asked for a business plan on how they're going to spend their money before they get their check. Y'all found that study? Nope, doesn't exist. Find me that study where the Japanese Americans were asked for a business plan or asked to write a report on how they're going to spend their money. Y'all found that? Nope, don't see it. Find me a proposal where white Americans who have been given trillions by the government just because they were white, Homestead Acts, there was more than one, GI Bill, Social Security Act, the Labor Union Act, Jim Crow, Indian Removal Act. Show me where white Americans had to show that they were going to be responsible. And by the way, rich white Americans who run these big corporations, how many bailouts have they gotten? Obama alone spent $29 trillion bailing out the banking industry alone. The airline industry, the auto industry, real estate, housing industry, the banking industry alone, Obama spent $29 trillion. Then we had to bail them out again. You may not like Donald Trump, but he was right when he was giving those corporations a hard time. And now the airline industry is having to cancel flights because they don't have enough staff. And the government is saying to them, what the hell y'all did with this money we gave y'all? And when they called these airline CEOs, all of them were white. Is anyone asking these rich CEOs who are trillionaires, millionaires, billionaires, anyone asking them what they're doing with their money before they get another million, billion, $1 trillion bailout? Anyone asking the Ukrainian government what they're doing with their money? They can't even account for how a lot of the money that was sent to Ukraine was spent. Anyone asking the Ukrainians to write a report? The Pentagon just failed their audit for the 5th time. They can't account for $21 trillion. $9 to $21 trillion. Is anyone asking the Pentagon? They just got $1 trillion budget again. Anyone asking the Pentagon how they're going to spend their money? So who do these people, including these black, who do they think they are telling us we don't deserve our reparations because we're not financially literate? Who the hell are you to put some qualification on us, the people owed the most, who have been done the worst, that was not given to people who have not gone through nearly as much as we have suffered and are not owed any remotely what we are owed, and have not done for this country even a modicum of all we've done to make this country what it is, to the reason why this country exists. Who are you to add on a qualification that was not put on other groups? Oh, and this is going to stop that we don't support black businesses. That's going to stop. That's going to stop. Y'all, tell me, some of y'all in the chat, you're black business owners. Do you have white people knocking down your door to support your business? I know there are some who do. Do you have Asians? Do you have Native Americans? Who supports black businesses besides black people? This whole thing that we don't support black businesses is BS. If not for black people, there would be no customers for black businesses. We're the only people who support black businesses. We make acts. We drive miles and miles. We order offline. We go out our way to support black businesses. If not for black people, there would be no customers for black businesses. These other groups ain't going out their way to support us. The reason why we don't support black businesses more is because we don't have enough of them. We don't have a lot of them. So if you live in a city, there's only 2 black businesses, and they only sell, one may sell food and one might sell, construction equipment, but you need diapers. You have no choice but to sometimes support a business that's nearby that may not be black owned. So, Dr. Umar Johnson, a message to you. If you want us to have land ownership, black businesses, black schools, you should never let the words, I don't care about reparations, or that's not my fight, come out your mouth. Reparations be your main thing. It's because freemen, foundational black Americans, black people who are descendants of American slaves or emancipated people. It's because we don't have reparations that we don't have our black Wall Streets of today that would be metropolises if they weren't burnt down originally. And we would have already doubled, quadrupled the amount of them. So there's more I can say, but I'm going to say this. Dr. Umar Johnson makes some very good points, which I agree, but he was wrong to make these points about lineage-based reparations and not know about what he was speaking. He was wrong for that. He could have said, you know what? He could have wrote me and said, I have some questions about this lineage-based reparations. Let's talk, and got a clear understanding about lineage-based reparations. He could have said, you know what? I'm going to go live. I'm going to open up. I'm going to drop a link. I'm going to bring people on to have a conversation about lineage-based reparations. But just going out there saying things like, oh, we hate Caribbeans and Africans, which first of all, that's gaslighting. It ain't going to work on me because I'm not going to keep even entertaining that lie. Okay? If you want to focus on people who hate Caribbeans and Africans hate Caribbeans and Africans. Go to Dominican Republic and Haiti. 2 Caribbean nations, both majority black, and they can't stand each other. Huh? Jamaicans right now want Haitians to get the hell out their country. But the Bahamians want Haitians to head out their country. Trinidad and Tobago want Haitians to head out their country. Ethiopians having a civil conflict. Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, they have been at each other's throats historically. Black Americans, they never treated other people like that. You may have an individual black American who might be, who may dislike black people from other places, and that's probably because they've been mistreated or looked down upon by them. That's another conversation. But black people have never done policies to attack other black people. So if you want to talk about people who hate Caribbeans and Africans, you better go talk to Caribbeans and Africans because they're the ones who hate Caribbeans and Africans. Talk to those Caribbeans and Africans about some of the nasty, disrespectful things that some of people in their ranks say about us. How about you scold and reprimand them? Oh, by the way, lineage-based reparations doesn't work. I want to know, can someone explain this to me then? Check this out. I'm gonna end with this. Someone needs to tell Namibians that lineage-based reparations does not work. Check this out right here. Look at this right here, y'all. So, Dr. Umar Johnson, lineage-based reparations does not work? Really? You want to scold Black Americans for having for doing the lineage-based movement, which is the constitutional way to go? For a man who says that we don't go after immigrants and stuff like that, other groups enough, you were mad at Justice Clarence Thomas, who ruled to end race-based admission policies, but Clarence Thomas put in his opinion that freedmen is not a racial term. It refers to Black people who were formerly enslaved by America and their descendants, the Black who are their descendants. And now people are writing articles saying Clarence Thomas pretty much said affirmative action can still exist for Black American freedmen, the people for whom it was originally meant. So either you want us to do something about these other groups using us, or you don't. But if lineage-based reparations is not the way to go, yeah, I like Dr. Umar too, and yeah, he is wrong on lineage-based. He is absolutely wrong, and he was wrong to make that video attacking it. Lineage-based reparations doesn't work. Dr. Umar Johnson, tell them this then. Hey, this is Namibia, other Africa. The Herero and Nama people are saying they want reparations. Huh? Oh, look at that, y'all. They want reparations for the Holocaust that Germany did to them. Oh, Namibia has, oh man, 1, 2, 3, 4, let me think. Namibia has 13 tribes. So is Dr. Umar Johnson going to do a video calling out the Herero and Nama people for being selfish? Is he going to say that they hate the other tribes in Namibia because they're saying that they deserve reparations for atrocities that were done to them by Germany? Is he going to make a video calling them out? Or does he only have that type of animosity to Black Americans? Oh, and by the way, y'all, guess what? That tribe in Namibia, the Herero and Nama tribe, guess what? Guess what happened with them? They said, hey, we went through it wrong. We want reparations for us. Guess what happened with them? Look, here's what happened with them. Here's what happened with them, y'all. Hold on. Guess what happened with them, y'all? They focused on their lineage. And guess what? They got their damn reparations. This tribe, these two tribes in Namibia, Herero and Nama, they got their reparations. Now, their reparations is not going to be direct cash payments. But you see, that's them over in Namibia. They got nothing to do with us here in America. But they are getting $1.3 billion from Germany to do projects for their tribes, and people from their tribes are going to be able to determine how the money gets spent for those projects. Oh, so is Dr. Umar Johnson going to get on there and call them tribalistic? Is he going to call them fools 3 times? Huh? This is in Mother Africa. The Herero and Nama tribe said, okay, you other tribes in Namibia, we don't got nothing against y'all. We don't got nothing against y'all. But we getting what's owed to us. And they got their money. And look, the first time, y'all, they rejected what Germany offered. Oh, and guess who supported them, by the way? Oh, y'all, stay with me now. Stay with me. Let's look who supported them. Look at this. Look who supported them. Look who supported them. The same ones, look who supported NARC and Cobra, the same group that tries to tell Freeman FBA that reparations should be for all Black people in America. They supported the Herero people saying reparations from Germany should just go to us, because the wrong was done to us. So how come these other groups can focus on only their lineage and no one says anything disgusting about them, lie on them, call them fools and calls them tribalistic? But when Black Americans, Freeman FBA do it, people want to open their damn mouths with nonsense and lies. You know why? It's because we, Freeman FBA, Black Americans, we have made these other groups think we owe them something. We're going to let them know from here on out, we don't owe nobody a goddamn thing. Frederick Douglass said that in his letter. Frederick Douglass, we owe Frederick Douglass an apology. Frederick Douglass said back in the 1800s, the American Negro doesn't owe Africa or no one nothing. Frederick Douglass said the American Negro is owed. Oh, speaking of Pan-African, I'm going to find this video. Fair use. Fair use. Oh, man. No, y'all, I got to find this video here. I got to find this video here. And I don't care how long I got to look for it. I'm going to find this video. Oh, no. Because the Umar Johnson, the Pan-African movement, we don't get into that. We don't get into that. Well, let's hear what one of the biggest Pan-Africans said when he was asked, should Africans get reparations too? I'm going to find this video. I don't care if y'all got to go to bed and wake up tomorrow morning and I don't find it. I'm going to still be on the look. I'm going to find this video. Y'all got to look at this video here. Check this video out here, my people. So Dr. Umar Johnson's like, that's why we Pan-Africans. We race-based. We don't get it to that. Let's hear what one of the biggest, probably one of the most iconic Pan-Africans of all time said. Y'all check this video out. Fair use, my people. Fair use. Y'all, this is gonna cause pandemonium in the Pan-African movement, but it really shouldn't. Because again, there are Pan-Africans who support lineage-based reparations. Check this out. Fair use. This is fair use. I ain't mean to be on here this long. Fair use. Look at this video. Now, y'all know Dr. Khalid Muhammad was a big Pan-African. And he was asked by an African man, well, hey, us Africans gonna get some reparations too, right? Listen to what he said.
You don't have a visa. When the visa system was started by the white man. Oh, yes, it was. We'll talk about it at another point. Started by the white man. White folks can go to Europe. They don't need a pass. I mean, they don't need a visa. They can go from.
Oh, come on.
From one white country to another without.
Give me a minute, y'all. You know, I'm Clyburns District. Y'all got to bear with me. Clyburns District.
What about the Africans from Africa? Are they going to get any reparations?
Okay, here, this video's better. Okay? This is what he's asked now. This man who's apparently from an African nation is saying, what about Africans from Africa? We gonna get some reparations too? Listen to what Dr. Khalid Muhammad, a major Pan-African, was saying. Listen.
Yes, sir. You have a question.
Yeah. What about the Africans from Africa? Are they going to get any reparations too, or are they part of the movement?
Explain the last part of it. Or are they a part of the movement?
Africans from Africa, like the Senegalese, we see Hunt, History, etc. Are they part of the movement?
Africa, too, must do something for her sons and daughters here in the diaspora, in the Western world. Oh, yes, some of you don't like that. You say Africa don't owe us nothing. Oh, hell.
Come on, damn it.
Oh, yes, they do. Some continental Africans.
Y'all, it's buffering. Sorry. Let it pause.
Brag about the slave trade. Some of them say, oh my.
Okay. Y'all get the point, though. Dr. Galito's Hahn was like, hey, hell, Africa owes us too. Okay? And he probably viewed us as Africans in America too. But the point was, even he recognized it was a lineage to it, that a harm group should get repair. Okay? He didn't say to that guy, we all black, we all get reparations. No. He said, hey, yo, they are part of the ones who did the harm. And therefore, they are part of the ones who owe us as well. So, my point, y'all, and I know it's been a while, but reparations is lineage status based because you have to be a member of the group that was harmed. And in regards to America, yes, black race does matter. You do have to be black, but you have to be a member of a specific black group. And that group is freedmen, FBA, meaning you are a black American who is a descendant of a person who was enslaved and emancipated by the United States of America. Okay? It will not include white people. Delineation has nothing to do with hatred of anyone. It has everything to do with love of ourselves. But if you're worried, Dr. Umar Johnson, about people being tribalists and hating one another, you can go to Ethiopia, who's having a civil war right now, and talk to them about that. You can do videos scolding them. You can do videos scolding the Haitians and Dominicans who can't stand each other. Okay? You can do videos scolding South Africans who can't stand these Zimbabweans and Nigerians in their countries because they say, the ones who at least have had issues, that the Zimbabweans and Nigerians are causing crime. You can do videos scolding them. We will not be scolded. I offered to debate Dr. Umar Johnson before they had the interview, but it was done offline. He said he'd rather have a discussion. I did the interview. But I am open to a debate. Oh, I'm definitely open to a debate, which is an intellectual discourse based off of fact. Because you see, during a debate is moderated. You can't just overtalk the other person and whoever's the loudest wins. You have to respond with facts, data, logic. So I'm open to a debate if it needs to go there. I'm definitely open to a debate. Open. The door is off the hinges. That's how open I am to it. And again, if we did reparations for a race base, from whom is this reparations going to come? What organization owes black people as a race? You go by the oppressor that harmed you. So if you're Jamaican, like Jamaicans are doing, they're looking to England, like people in Barbados are doing. People in the Democratic Republic of Congo look to Uganda and Belgium now. People in Rwanda are looking to Belgium and France now. People in Senegal are looking to France. You've had Mexico. Some Mexicans are talking about Spain. You go after the oppressor that harmed you. Black Americans are looking to the American government that harmed our group. Black people who are descendants of American slaves and those that were emancipated by the American government. You don't get to come to America voluntarily and suffer racism. Reparations is not about solving racism. Reparations is about a debt that is owed. If you want to solve racism, that's a whole separate matter. Reparations is about the fact that America harmed my people, my lineage, and they owe us for that harm. It is not about getting rid of racism. It is not even about anti-blackness. If we get reparations tomorrow, anti-blackness is still going to be around. Solving anti-blackness is a whole other matter. So you don't get to come as a black immigrant and say, oh, I was here in the 1960s, which, by the way, Umar Johnson, all data shows, and I'll wait for you to show me other, because I'm not even entertaining that, it was less than 1%. Less than 1% of the black population in America were black immigrants. And if you're saying that only 3% of them are black, only 3% of the black population now are black immigrants, then why does it matter? What's the offense then when saying that it should only go to the majority of black people who are black Americans? What's the offense? We're not excluding a lot of people. And if you want to say there's only a small group of Black immigrants that in the Black American population, then there should be none of them who are being anti-Black. If you are only a small percentage, anti-Black American, if you are only a small percentage of the Black population, but I can already point out several people who are Black immigrants that are big anti-Black American bigots, that's a problem. What's going to happen then when your numbers increase? Okay? But I digress. The Black immigrant population in America up until before 1965 was less than 1%. Less than 1%. And if there were Black immigrants who came after 1865, oh well. The debt for reparations began with the emancipation of the 4 to 4.5 million Black Americans who were enslaved. The descendants of those people, the Black descendants of those people, the freedmen, are the ones who are part of the group that incurred the harms and therefore are eligible for reparations from the United States of America. Anti-Black is a whole other matter. So, thank y'all for tuning in. This was over 2 hours. I did not mean for it to go that long, but I had to address the misinformation put out there. I had to. I don't dislike Dr. Umar Johnson. I still actually admire him in many ways. He makes very good points. And I know some people don't say he doesn't do this. He does call out Africans and Caribbeans for their BS too. Oh, and by the way, there was a video I did see where Dr. Umar Johnson was like, oh, when Africans or the Black immigrants come here, the reason they sometimes don't, unite with Black Americans because they say, what's in it for us? What's in it for you? You got to come to our goddamn country and not have to worry about a lynch mob in broad daylight hanging you from a tree and having nasty picnics taking photos of it. Because we did that fighting and we still got ways to go. You got to come here and enjoy, at least in America, that is not on paper, at least now, not allowing anti-Blackness to happen, on paper at least. No, we should look at you before you come to our country and say, what's in it for us, having you over here benefiting from our organizations. Dr. Umar Johnson did make a point. We are too damn inclusive. Black Americans, we are inclusive. I told you all this story. But I'm going to share it again. My mother went back to school, and I was trying to get her this scholarship because she's such a wonderful person who does so much for people. And I found the scholarship for parents who are single parents, because my mother and father had divorced, and who were going back to school. And I was so excited. And they were going to offer $5,000. My mother was going to a community college. So her tuition wasn't much. It was going to cover like 2 semesters. And people always say I'm a very good writer. So I was writing a narrative for my mother's life story. And I was feeling good about it. I let some of my colleagues read it. I told them it wasn't for me. It was for another person. They wanted some feedback, and I would give it to them because I didn't want them to think it was because of me, because they would just say flattering things to them in front of them. And some of them started crying about how touching the story was. I was feeling good. It's my fault what happens. I go to submit the application, and I read the fine print for Jamaican people of Jamaican descent only. This is America. So Black immigrants who look like us, who we welcome into our organizations, our HBCUs, who get scholarships and stuff that are for Black people, which for the longest in America meant you were a Freeman FBA. It now, in some college campuses, over 70% of the population are Black immigrants. They get to benefit from things that were only for us, but then they go and start organizations that are just for them. You can Google right now and you will find millions of organizations: Jamaican Americans, Ethiopian Americans, Bahamian Americans, Nigerian Americans, Ethiopian Americans, Brazilian Americans, Cuban Americans, Senegalese Americans, organizations that are just for their group. Do we call them hateful? Do we say that shouldn't exist? Do we make petitions saying they need to close it down? No. We respect them being able to delineate in our country, looking like us and therefore benefiting from the blackness that we have worked to get as much as we have, which it still ain't nothing, and we still owe them a lot more. If they'll go across the street and start an organization just for them and exclude us. Botham Jean, remember? Botham Jean was murdered in his apartment. Y'all know that white woman would have gotten away with it if Black Americans, by and large, did not raise hell. We got justice for that family. They start a scholarship for Caribbean Americans to go to school here in America, excluding Black Americans who went out there and got their son the justice that he did deserve. But you want to talk about we tribalistic? Man, you ain't said nothing about that. Other groups come to America, and not just Black immigrants, but we're going to focus on Black immigrants. That's who we're talking about here. Other groups come to America only because Black Americans, first of all groups. America is only the wealthiest nation in the world because of Black Americans. But other groups who were once barred, like Black people from other parts of the world, were barred from America. They come to America only because Black Americans fought for it, and then start organizations and resources just for their group. And then we get called tribalistic because we are doing what will work for us to get the debt we should have been paid centuries ago constitutionally. Y'all make no apologies about it, because I won't. Thank y'all for coming through. Y'all take care. Oh, see y'all.